Hey everybody, we're here in the deep reserves of the JW Marriott at LA Live, hiding out to record a conversation with Mikael Kasurinen.
My name is Mikael Kasurinen and I'm the game director on Control.
I'm going to start with a wildly open-ended question.
Go for it.
What is Control to you? Gotcha.
Actually, it's not that hard to answer, actually. If we go back and look at our previous game, Quantum Break, and us coming out from that, we took this kind of moment to look at ourselves into our past and so on, and think, like, where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. And I think there was this feeling, this why within the studio that, you know, we want to go into a direction that is something that's more true to ourselves, like more connected, sincere, honest, you know, direct experience that we want to create, where we're not ashamed or afraid of what it is and not worry about how people will react to it. Even though we might have controversial things or things that people might not like, let's be okay with that and instead create something that is iconic and memorable and so on.
Did that feel at all like a risk to you to make something like that?
Absolutely. Initially, you have to kind of stop and think, what are the type of experience we want to create? You have to balance out risk and safety. And there are things in Control that are easy to get into and understand. Like the combat system, it was important to me that is approachable. You should be able to pick up the control and start playing and have fun. So we have that. We have this approachable core gameplay in place. And then we kind of chose that, okay, there are areas that we're going to take more risk with, like, you know, with the themes of the world and the characters and the different concepts. And sometimes it was about not doing something, like we don't want to have question markers. We don't want to tell the player, like, go over there at any given time, but instead push the players to go through this experience where they actually pay attention to the world around them. And they find their own way through. There's no hand-holding. It is a balancing act whenever you do a concept where you like certain things that you want to take risks with and so on. And I'll be honest, there's more like risk-taking happening in Control compared to our previous games. And we knew it. And that was kind of the point, kind of connecting to what I talked about before, that let's go into a direction that there will be a risk in it, but at the same time, we'll make an impact. We'll have people that will absolutely love what we're doing, and let's be okay that there might be people that are not. Also, need to say that creating a new IP in this kind of environment by an independent studio, there was that business-oriented risk as well that we acknowledged and understood, but we felt strongly that this is the right way for us, and then we just went for it.
Welcome to the research sector of the Federal Bureau of Control. I'm Dr. Casper Darling, head of research.
I think Control is one of the most successful games at mixing media. I wanted to ask you about why you chose to go in that direction.
You mean like connecting different, like live action with?
Yeah, like the videos of Professor Darling, and sometimes we saw Courtney.
I think it's always been part of us that we kind of boldly want to mix different mediums together to create something interesting, like remixing different elements, and not kind of be precious about it, like, oh, this is a video game, it should only have like in-world elements to kind of convey the story or the characters and so on. Instead, I think that we feel that there's certain kind of richness in bringing in different types of medium like Dr. Darling. Everybody loves Dr. Darling. What was important to us that we integrate these things into the world in such a way that they don't break immersion. Immersion is extremely important to me. We had to have a number of discussions, like how do we deal, for instance, with Trench, when he appears to you, it's kind of a ghostly image.
Yes.
And we chose to do live action, but we shot it in a way that kind of blends it into the environment. So it feels like it's part of this world. It could have easily gone wrong as well. So it required actually a lot of thought and work regarding lighting, and there's special techniques that we're using by layering actually multiple images on top of each other to create this kind of three-dimensional feel. It feels like one experience, but multiple different mediums kind of link into that world and kind of still maintains kind of a good experience that, you know, makes sense and doesn't break immersion.
You take that a step further beyond just using video and in-game graphics, the way you bake in music and I mean, God, the ashtray maze.
Yeah, I know.
If you haven't played that part, skip forward a few seconds.
Take control.
Holy
I know. Us using music as a part of the gameplay experience. It's actually, we did that with Alan Wake as well. There's this a massive fight at the barn, and there's this kind of an old, you know, stage, and you're fighting against the Taken, and there's this rock song that starts playing on top of it. With Control, we want to go further. Like, let's make it part of the lore, like part of this world. And yes, this is spoilers, so don't listen if you haven't played it.
Play the game, come on.
Yeah, yeah, you should play the game, please.
Guys.
The music acts as a key through a maze, and it's like, that's brilliant. And we're not even sure, is it the psyche of the person listening to music that allows them to get through the maze, or is it the music itself, and that doesn't matter. The beauty is in the context of that moment happening, and these different things come together into an experience that feels wild and unpredictable and sometimes fun and sometimes unsettling and so on. So you have this strange combination of elements. And if I would list these things separately to you at any given time, like how does that? But then it just works, and it's magical. And that's one of the best things about games. And I think it's unique to games compared to any other forms of entertainment, that there's this sense of immersion and interaction that you're in the world. A movie or a TV show, they could never, do that emotional experience that we did with that maze. The moment I played it for the first time, where the kind of music was in place and the kind of basic form was shifting and all of that stuff, I knew that this is going to be special.
It's a totally singular experience, and it's amazing that you achieved that the way you did.
Yeah, and it wasn't easy. Certain elements that people think are hard are actually quite easy. But then there are elements that people don't even realize, but the song actually adapts to how you move through that maze. Yeah, like if you stop, then you kind of have to work with that. It's not one track that's just played through. What if you stop? What if you go back? Like, what happens then? Like, it has to be built in a dynamic way.
Right.
The song is actually broken into so many different pieces, and genius designers, audio designers kind of put it together and made it work in that thing. That's a thing that people don't expect, but that was actually one of the hardest parts, to make the music work. And because nobody notices it, it means that we succeeded.
It almost mirrors the ashtray maze, like the way a hallway can elongate without seeing the panels.
We do a lot of that work that people don't even realize that it's there.
I can even feel some of the subtle touches in just using the telekinesis to grab something.
There was this interesting observation that people usually start like, okay, it's like a gun, like it starts with an explode, like boom, like you shoot the thing off. But then the more we looked at it, the more it felt like, no, it should be less about that and should be more about the end result. So we actually minimize and dampen the sounds when you launch the thing, but when it hits something, that's amplified and so on. So you get kind of a stronger sense of connection when what is the consequence that you achieve through your actions instead of the action itself.
The oldest house is so stubborn almost, and like, how did you navigate that tension between an immovable object meeting an unstoppable force?
You look at the materials and they're familiar materials to you, like concrete and wood and steel, but then how they are put together creates this kind of unsettling feel that is a bit off and it's a bit oppressive and so on. Like things are like familiar meets alien. That's like a huge theme throughout the game, that you see something that's familiar, but then there's something off about it. There's kind of a strong, kind of fundamental part of the building that it is what it is, and you need to accept that. But then also a sense of me being able to impact it. And we built the game, like the prop and everything from the start, as like a physical world. So you can almost pick up anything and throw them around. And every single time there needed to be a physical response. Even if you can't break something, you will create a crack, or there will be a visual reaction. Making that telekinetic combat, like the ability to pick up an object and throw them around, that's definitely wasn't easy to perfect that. But what it also meant was that the world has to behave in a cohesive way. I don't want the player to wonder, like, can I pick up that chair or that table? The answer should be obviously yes, you can. You shouldn't even think about it. You should kind of go for this intuitive world. So a lot of work was needed to create that foundation for the player.
I think a lot of what holds this all together is the consistency of art design. How did you work from a standpoint as game director with art design?
I've worked really closely with the art director, Janne Pulkkinen, who is like fantastic, extremely creative and talented guy. And he established the key visual identity elements quite early on. I remember it was, I think, 2016 summer when we were kind of working for the first kind of visual pieces of the game. And we talked a lot about brutalism and kind of talk about, the value of color and the importance of restraint and simplicity, and whatever is there for a reason. We were building this visual target. We actually haven't shown it publicly. Maybe someday we will. But it was like early concept, like what will the kind of visual identity of the game be like? And there was this moment where you exit an elevator and there's this kind of red light flooding into the room. And the moment the elevator doors kind of open up, that red light floods in, and boom, Control logo on top of it.
Wow.
And that was in 2016. And I was like, this is it. This is the game. This is the visual identity of the game. We both knew at that moment that, this is the kind of direction we're going to go with that typography, that simplicity, the kind of striking visuals, and the use of color and light. It felt unique, it felt bold, direct, but also at the same time something that people can understand and get. And when you actually play the game, you have that same moment. The red light is not there, but the kind of spirit of that moment when the elevator doors open up, after Jesse kind of goes with the elevator to the main floor, you get that logo on top of it and so on. So it was an important moment for us. People think that, it's a concrete wall, but there's actually a lot of nuance to how we treat the materials, how they're rendered, how the lighting is handled. It's not just something that we threw together. There's a lot of work that goes into the composition of the image and how things are organized and orchestrated. And of course, all games have art direction style guides, but here we had a very specific kind of goals with lighting and how we wanted to handle that. And it's also interesting kind of a risk from a visual standpoint to make repetition a strength, like be bold and simple with repetition. And yes, we're going to have a concrete wall that is massive, and there's going to be nothing on it. That can be a tough statement for many people. Like, but let's paint it, or let's add some decals on it. Like no, it is what it is, and that's the point. And when you see it in the game, it doesn't look like a gamistic concrete wall. It feels oppressive, and it makes a statement because it's lit in a beautiful way. The materials are kind of handled in the right way, and then it becomes a symbol of the emotional vibe that world has.
You do a lot with the subtlest changes to the materials. I'm assuming that there's a ton at work that I'm not even realizing is there.
You'll be correct.
Thank you. Do you think you could tell me a little bit about the future of Control?
I want to start with that we're really happy with the reception. And is there's something really liberating and validating, and gives us a sense of conviction that we put our hearts and souls and minds into this experience, and it reflects who we are. And seeing that response has been amazing. And that already in itself means a lot, and it makes us think about where to go next with Control. As an artist, as a creative person, I think it's important to recognize that we had a certain emotional environment we were in when we started to work on that. We had certain kind of creative goals and so on. Looking at the future of Control, I think it would be also a mistake to just repeat that. I think that would be a mistake. We have to me, it's a complex, interesting, nuanced world filled with possibilities. And I think in the future, we have to stay true to the kind of core ideas of what that world is about. Having this feeling of doing things that are unexpected is part of what that game is. And I think it applies to the franchise overall. I think we all want to continue working on Control. We all love it. And it kind of, as I said, it reflects who we are. And the path forward might be a bit unexpected, but and so on.
Sure.
Regarding the expansions, all I can say at this point is that to me, every single thing that we release are actually different. Some of them focus on different things, and that's also kind of part of what Control is. That it's a spectrum of multiple different types of experiences. It's a world where you can have Dr. Darling and this kind of him being excited about different kind of phenomena. You kind of diving into that lore, and it can be a world where you have this massive, complicated boss fight that is brutal in an alternative dimension, and they both belong, right?
Would you want to go in totally new directions or return to some of the things referred to in Control?
Well, I think the key message maybe that I'm trying to say is that, in a way, when you look at Control, like you take a few steps back and look at, okay, what's its role in a larger picture that starts emerging? It is a shared universe with Alan Wake. And suddenly there is this picture that starts to kind of emerge where you see, it's one part of a bigger whole, and it starts to open up this sense of possibilities into other types of things. When you start playing the game, there's this crucial moment at the beginning where Jesse steps inside, and there's this kind of a glass doors behind you, and you see the street of New York City, and you see the normal life.
Yeah.
Right? People walking, cars driving past and so on. And it's a big moment because you're leaving that normal life behind, right? Like you're stepping over the precipice into the unknown. You can dive into the rabbit hole, into the wonderland. And to me, it's a journey that you go through. When you think about the future of Control, do we just want to repeat that journey, or is it a different type of a journey?
I do have one more question, which is a little silly,
Go
which
for
is
it.
why I saved it to the end. I found in one of the rooms, I did find a picture of Tom's Diner from Seinfeld. But right? Yeah. So,
I know.
Is this in the Seinfeld universe? Is there an alternate Seinfeld universe? Where does Control sit with Seinfeld?
Yeah, I mean, is Seinfeld in Control's universe?
Thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Absolutely,
I don't want
thank
to
you.
take any more of your time than we have to. I really appreciate your insights, and you've just made an outstanding game. I'm really happy to have been able to sit down with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Mikael.
Thank you.
All right, great.
Concrete.
I'm so glad you asked. Concrete is generally perceived by the public as ugly, stark, and drab.
It's very unattractive.
It's not very attractive.
I think it should be torn down.
But many architects admire the material